Well, hi, I'm Katie Allen. I am the federal member for Higgins and I am in the Liberal Party. So I have been a doctor for all of my working life, but soon after becoming a doctor, I started doing medical research because people were coming in and I didn't know why they were coming in. So I was trying to fix the system by doing research to prevent them from coming in the first place. So I've been a paediatrician at the Royal Children's Hospital for 28 years and a professor at the University of Melbourne for 15 years and a professor at the University of Manchester as well. But I was working a lot with departments and bureaucrats about trying to help the health system, and I've also been a chair of a local school and on the board of a local hospital, so I was doing more governance as I was becoming more senior. And then I decided that I'd like to go further up the decision-making tree, I suppose, and put my hand up to get inside the tent to be a politician. And so I ran in the Victorian state election in 2018. I was pre-selected 19 months before that, and so I was a political candidate for those 19 months while trying to work and raise a family and all those things. I didn't win the seat of Prahran in the Victorian state election, but a few weeks after that I decided I was going to try and run at the federal level, and I actually put my hand up for the Senate, a Senate ticket, a third seat on the Senate ticket, which was regarded at the time as unwinnable because I wanted to give it a go at the next level. And while I was preparing for that, Kelly O'Dwyer in the seat of Higgins decided to announce her retirement. And so I put my hand up for pre-selection, and nearly a year later, here I am as the federal member for Higgins. Well, the first thing about politics is I kind of don't think about it that I'm a politician in some ways. I'm really about helping others, and I started helping people, one person or one family at a time as a local paediatrician, and then helping medical research, helping thousands of people in a particular area. But as a parliamentarian, you are helping everyone each and every day, because the decisions made in federal and state and actually local council, those decisions influence each and every one of us each and every day. So to me, it's about good decision making, good judgment, being ethical, being reasonable, understanding that there's lots of vested interests, and how can we bring all of that together in a way that's going to take Australia forward. So in medical research, I was doing that. I'm representing our country on infant feeding guidelines for the globe. I was representing our country's position on all sorts of things. So in some ways this is very similar, but now I'm called a politician rather than a paediatrician. I think in many ways, having an ambition to make a difference is the same, whether it's through medical research, state parliament or federal parliament. They're the same skill set. And I've said this to people, that the skill set is very similar, it's just a different content. So of course the state's looking after hospitals and schools and infrastructure, while the federal parliament's looking after our security, our economy, our environmental policies. So they're nationwide policies, but they all interact very clearly with state policies and local government policies as well. So to me, it's part of the whole same sort of spectrum. It's just you're positioned in a different way. So I'm only a new MP, so it's hard to say I've had a lot of career highlights, career achievements. There's been lots of career highlights. So giving my first speech was an incredible experience. It was very intimidating because I haven't been a politician my whole life, and I've sort of come new to this area. But it's a great privilege to set down why you've decided to put your hand up and what you stand for as a person at an individual level. So it's a great privilege to be able to say that in such a public way. But more than that, I've written a number of opinion pieces, which I'm very proud of. I'm also on a lot of parliamentary committees, and you have an opportunity to help shape policy in those parliamentary committees. So I'm on the Science and Technology and Industry Committee, I'm on the Trade and Investment Growth Committee, my committee on the NBN, the Library Committee, Parliamentary Library Committee, which is awesome because I love all the academics that are in our parliamentary library, Communication Arts, Indigenous Reconciliation and Health. So I'm on a lot of committees, and being able to recommend inquiries and then participate in those inquiries has been really fantastic, and you feel like you're making a real difference because you're hearing from so many experts that then helps to shape our policy. So the first thing I would say is that maybe unusually, I don't find being a woman specifically makes it more or less challenging for me. I'm not sure why that is. I treat people on their merit. Whatever their gender or sexual preference, they're people who are other humans who are trying to do their best, and so I treat everyone with the same respect, and I feel people do the same to me. But what I would say is, for someone who's coming from what they'd say real life experience into a parliamentary experience, there is a transition of culture, because there's ways that you do things and the ways that you might talk about things. So it's like learning a whole new language, and there's a whole protocol about when you're on a committee, you have to refer to the chair, or if you're in the chamber, you have to refer to the member for. So there's a new language that you're learning, and that's an interesting transition. It's not difficult, it's just interesting. But what I would say, that as a medical researcher and professional my entire life, mostly when patients come in, they see me as an expert who knows what they're talking about, and that I'm ethical and I'm going to give them information that's going to help them. That isn't necessarily the case in politics. In fact, that's the biggest transition. Most patients who come in your door come because they trust you and they respect you. That being said, some people don't necessarily believe you because they have a different view of the world. So someone might come in, and not that I do, but someone might make a prescription for medication, and that patient might say, I don't believe in those sorts of medications. So there's always a difference in, not always, there's often a difference in knowledge base with patients. But when you're in a parliamentary environment, there is a difference of value set in your approach to things, because the parties have different value sets that have resulted in them being different parties. So I see it as a bit like a footy team, is that I might be a member of one footy team, and all the supporters of the other footy teams aren't going to like what I do just because I'm a member of that footy team. And that's a difference that I'm not used to. So you in the community, and someone who might vote for a red team or a green team may not even be open to listening to what I say because I'm wearing a blue jersey, and they go, don't like you because you're a blue jersey person. And I just have to learn to accept and respect that there's a difference of opinion. Hopefully we all believe in making the world a better place, but let's argue about how to get there. And as long as they're talking about the idea, not the person, and they're not personalising it, that's absolutely fine. So when I was running in Prahran, I was asked a lot about women in politics, and the Liberal Party, to be fair, hadn't been doing as well as some of the other parties. But generally, I would say women in leadership has been a problem, not just in politics, but in medicine and law and business right across Australia and around the world. And I don't think we really fully understand why that is. I think politics is the worst of all of those. But that being said, since I've got elected in Parliament, after my very first day when I was interviewed by the ABC and they asked about how many women were in the Liberal Party, and I told them that we had a 50-50 intake of women, the questions evaporated, which I think is good, because at the end of the day, I think it should be based on merit, and there are plenty of women with merit. We just need to understand more deeply why either they're not putting themselves forward or they're not elected. But in the Victorian state election, we had a record number of women in the Liberal Party running, and they weren't elected. So people don't vote based on gender, and that's sort of right. They should base it on the policies of the party. And so I think we need to make sure that we're speaking better to the electorate. There are more opportunities to vote for women, but people don't vote based on gender. They vote based on how it's going to affect their lives. I was on Q&A recently on the ABC, and it was interesting because several times the host said throughout the interview, isn't it wonderful that the three politicians here are all women? And I know he was being very positive, but I thought, if we were three people of different diversity, so if we were all three Africans or we were all three in a wheelchair, I kind of think if he'd said, isn't it great we've got three disabled people here, or isn't it great we've got three people of African descent here, people go, that's kind of not right, it's a bit off. And so there's something about that question being mentioned, or that comment being mentioned, that I feel belittles that we're there. I prefer if people don't notice that I'm a woman, they just notice that I'm a good representative for my people. And Yeah, so I hope that my daughters don't have to have that question constantly reminded. And even in medical research, I remember once I did Australia's first liver cell transplant, and one of the professors at the university said, "Isn't it great that was an all-women's team?" And I'm kind of like, well, why? I mean, women are great. Like, that's just normal, for me. And the thing is, he didn't notice that there were men in the team. So I suppose I prefer, I feel in some ways I'm a bit gender blind. I don't think about people in terms of gender. I think about them in terms of who they are and what they do. And yeah, part of it's maybe the gender side, but yeah, I think I like to take people more based on their merit than worrying about those things specifically, though I am aware that there are issues that are particular to women that we need to make sure we protect and champion. There's women's health issues, for instance, ovarian cancer doesn't affect men. And so there are, of course, many issues that we need to champion. And one of those things has been women in the workforce and female participation and the gender pay gap, which we're doing a lot of work to try and close. There are more and more women participating in the workforce, and our federal government is taking quite significant steps with recently some hundreds of millions of dollars of initiatives to ensure that women are supported to be participating in the workforce at the level that they want to, paid in a way that's equal and fair. It's a really difficult question. My great auntie was the first female MP in the cabinet in the UK. Her name was Margaret Bonfeld. And women in that era, so the start of the 1900s, if they had a career at all, they often had to make a decision between even getting married, let alone having a family. And then women in the sort of 30s and 40s, I had an auntie, a great auntie who was a doctor, and she graduated in 1912. And again, she got married, but she didn't have children. So women had to make a decision about one thing or the other. We're lucky now because we have the choice that we can have a family and we can have a career and we can do that juggle. But I think it's really hard. I think women really, really struggle because there's so much to do and we're often doing it all ourselves. And I kind of sort of call it the cake and eat it concept. So I try and reassure people that you can have your cake and eat it, but sometimes not all at the same time. And that when you might step down in the workplace to be more with your small children before you step back up into the workplace, it's one of those things where you don't exit stage right. Stay with a foot in the door and keep treading water so you can get back into the system. And I think that exit and entry for women in the workplace is true for career progression, but it's also true for what we're seeing is a growing rate of women who are financially struggling in the over 55-year-old category. Is they're often been in and out of the workplace with regards to having a family or being carers or being part-time workers, and their superannuation has cut off. And we've, as a federal government, recognised getting women back into the workplace is really important for their long-term financial security. So we've made steps with regards to superannuation reforms for women, particularly going in and out of work, but also provided lots of funding to help get them back in to the workforce through retraining, because often their skills might have changed because the workforce is changing so rapidly and young people are coming in as digital natives while older people may not have the same skill set. So there's a lot that we can do to make sure that women are staying on those career trajectories. But I think there's also a fundamental issue with regards to leadership roles, in that women, and this is a well-known phenomenon, when women are more likely to sort of see the things for why they can't be up to the next position, and men seem to not notice them in the same way. Now that's, in research-based evidence that women are less likely and more likely. Maybe I'm the exception to the rule and give it a go, and even if I feel like it's a bit of a stretched target. I think we've got to be better at helping women to have stretched targets. But I think the next generation of women your age and my kids' age, they don't have that same sort of, I can't do this because of X, Y, and Z. I think the women who are coming through now are can-do women, and as they say, strong is the new pretty. So I feel that the women of millennials are absolutely awesome, and they know they can do it. They know they can get in there and be as good as anybody else. Yeah, so I think sometimes I might have thought this was the case as well until I got into leadership roles, is sometimes people look at the what people kind of look like and sound like and seem to represent rather than what they deliver. And I think that sometimes people can think, oh, if I sound and look like this, that means I'll become a leader. But it's actually what you do with your time. So I think actions speak louder than words. So if you're hardworking, collaborative, have great ideas, and if you there's a little bit of playing the game in that you need to scratch other people's backs so they scratch yours. There's a bit of a give and take in the environment, and women are not as used to that negotiation about, contributing to the greater good in that way. And so I think if you realise it's what you deliver and what you can deliver for others, that's important, and not worry about who you are and what you represent in the same way. It's more about actions speak louder than words.